Hello again, ladies and gentlemen, Sonic from SEGADriven.com, and welcome back to our Sonic Amateur Games Expo 2018 coverage. In this video we're taking a look at Sonic Islands, which I think is probably the most interesting and spectacular 3D Sonic outing at this year's Sage. So this one is, again, very similar to a lot of these 3D outings at the moment, is that it's trying to sort of keep the momentum-based gameplay of the original 16-bit games, but transfer it into a 3D space. So you do have to gain momentum. You will have difficulty getting up hills if you're just running, but if you have obviously slung yourself off a big ramp beforehand, you will, gain the speed that you need to go over said hill and things like that. It's very cool. The way this is arranged is what I think really sets it apart. So even though there's quite a large open space to muck around in and explore, and you can go back to any of it at any time, it's still quite focused. I don't want to say linear, because it's not linear. There's, like I just said, there's a large space here to explore, but it just feels like there's a little bit more focus on going to a certain place, and there's a little bit more variety to the landscape, so that you can remember where everything is, and I recognise this from earlier and stuff like that. But there's a set sort of goal basically with this, in that at the very back of the stage there is a barrier which you can open after freeing a certain amount of flickies. Once you open that barrier, there's another barrier behind that which you can open with another set of flickies, and once you've done that, it then opens up the bottom of the map, which is essentially just a big playground area, and it's a little bit more like a tech demo down there. Basically, you're just sort of rewarded with a nice big area where you can muck around with the physics, essentially, which is lovely, I've got to say. I like that a lot. So it's a shame, I suppose, that you can't really complete this as such. There isn't an end goal. There isn't a nice checkpoint at the end of everything, and then the credits roll sort of thing. But at the same time, there's obvious things to do and somewhere to go and things to find. Scattered around the map as well are emeralds. Collecting an emerald will unlock an extra ability for you to use. So they're nicely sort of drip fed to you, so you can get used to the controls pretty early on with a very sort of limited set of abilities, and as you go through you earn more abilities, and it's just, it's like I say, it's a nice sort of way to drip feed you extra abilities without sort of like overloading you with too much to do at once, which is a really, really nice way of structuring the sort of unlock of abilities. I think that's a really cool way of doing it. It's also very pretty, I've got to say. I love the grass in this early section here. Again, I like that there's variety to the scenery, so you know exactly where you are, and you start to remember the layout of the stage. There's a section down the bottom here that looks a bit like Marble Zone with the purple tiles. I think that's really cool. In certain areas it does look a little bit unfinished. You can see some untextured scenery, and when you're down the bottom in particular, it's very sparse. But in the main sort of gameplay area, it does look really lovely, and I think people are going to have a lot of fun exploring this one, because again, once you get sort of used to the physics and the momentum, you'll start to take take more interesting risks. You'll start launching yourself off things and think, oh, maybe I can get over there. Or you'll start moving the camera around and notice that there's extra scenery and things to muck around with further down. It's just a really, really cool little game. It's structured really well, and I think this is definitely one of the more successful attempts at bringing that sort of momentum-based old school gameplay into a 3D space, whilst not being, overloaded with too much, and having an area that's so similar looking but so wide that it's difficult to explore, and you can get lost very easily. Like in, for example, have a look back at our video on Sonic Utopia from the last stage in particular. That really has struggles with its structure. It does feel like you get lost in the space very easily, whereas Sonic Islands doesn't have that problem at all. I think it's a lot better structured. I think it's a lot more unique. I think it's very easy to tell where you are thanks to the landmarks and the different sort of aesthetic to certain areas. It just makes everything a lot more memorable and a lot easier to navigate. So yeah, Sonic Islands is a real gem, definitely one worth checking out. a really cool little game, and like I say, I think it's one of the more successful attempts at bringing that momentum gameplay into a 3D space. I think it's a really, really successful attempt at that, and it'll be lovely to see where it goes from here onwards. So fingers crossed this continues its development and we get to see more of it in future events.